Molly, and thanks to everyone who has chosen to join this session today. I hope that you find it valuable and really that that we can have a very interactive discussion. I have prepared a few slides. I thought about having all sorts of slides and things that maybe I could show, but I think it would be more valuable if really we could just have a conversation. Let me share my screen really quick here. While I'm sharing, just to maybe give you a little bit more information about me. Like Molly said, I work at Purdue University with Purdue Online. I've been in my role just over 2 years now, and have been able to be a part of and see some kind of interesting online education initiatives. You may have heard that Purdue University a couple years ago acquired Kaplan University as a way to really scale up its online offerings, and that's been a really interesting thing to see. But as I said, today I'd like to talk a little bit more about digital badges and micro-credentials. I guess before I keep yakking, is everyone can hear me? Is that right? Good. Okay, I'll have Molly let me know in case something happens there. But sorry, I'll get back here into the slideshow. So I want to just briefly go over kind of the goals that I have for this session. Again, like I said, I'd really prefer that this be an interactive discussion. I'd like to just highlight some examples of opportunities that I've been a part of here, specifically at Purdue, but also just different examples that I've seen as I've done some research on digital badge and micro-credentials, but want to talk specifically about some of my experience with implementing digital badges at Purdue in different ways. And I hope that in doing so, it prompts some discussion to explore and also talk about some of the challenges that and questions that you might be having as you are trying to maybe implement digital badges or micro-credentials at your institutions. And hopefully as a group, within the time that we have, we can share maybe some strategies that have proven to be successful or just helpful and things like that. So if everyone is okay with that, that's what I hope to get out of this. And in terms of what are not my goals for this, I don't want to be the only one who does all of the talking. So you don't have to. I don't have necessarily a designated time for questions at the end. I do have some questions on some of these slides towards the end, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or put something in the chat box, and Molly can make sure that I get that. And I also just want to make it clear that I won't be able to speak to every use or potential use of digital badges or micro-credentials. Obviously, there's a lot happening, as we know, in higher education right now with these two different types of educational offerings or these new technologies that are emerging. And so, but I'm happy to speak to what I do know. So I'm assuming that most, if not all of you, are familiar with the concept of micro or sometimes referred to as alternative credentials. But in case you're not, really a micro or alternative credentials are really just non-traditional models, often in digital format, not always, that really can just afford primarily shorter, more focused and intense courses or some type of instruction to learners. And we're seeing it become very popular, obviously, to adult learners, people who are out in, they're working and they want something very specific, very competency focused. But in some research that I've done just in really kind of reviewing the literature, it is interesting to see that higher education institutions are also looking at how they can implement and leverage digital badges and micro-credentials, as well as K through 12. I won't get too in-depth on any of these things. If you want to ask me follow-up questions outside of this, I'm happy to share anything that I've learned along the way. And really, a digital badge, if you're not familiar with the term, is really just a web-based graphic that represents some type of skill or competency that has been achieved by a learner as outlined by some type of credible issuer or someone who endorses a certain badge. It's just a way to really easily share something that you know or something you can do. And so I would like to just, like I said, highlight specifically 3 individual cases of digital badge implementation and micro-credential implementation that I've been a part of here at Purdue University. Talk about some of the challenges that we've faced in doing so, some of the ways that I've felt that it's worked out well. I will say with the digital badges, I have not been a part of any academic degree implementing the digital badges. I work a lot with some of the non-credit programs, and some of those have looked at implementing badges because of professional development and adult education and things like that. So first I want to talk about a summer program that I was a part of that we implemented digital badges with. Also working with the athletics department and actually using digital badges as a means to train their student tutors, and also more on the micro-credential side where we used the MOOC platform to actually develop a micro-credential that was a pathway to one of our master's degree programs. And so I'll just briefly go over what we did with those, and also if there's interest I can actually go into the badge platform and show a little more detail on that. So our Summer Start program, this was back in 2016 when I worked in this office. And here on the left are just some of the examples of the 5 badges that we required students to complete. This was a group of 120 conditionally admitted incoming students to Purdue, which meant that the only way that they were going to be able to start in the fall was that they had to come to a 5-week session during the summer. So that was the condition upon which they were admitted. And during that 5 weeks, they took actually 6 credit hours of college courses. And in addition to that, we developed 5 badges that were a little more on the extracurricular life outside of academics at a university. And so you can see the examples of them here. We had focus on, focusing on your own individual strengths, doing the My Strengths assessment, and diversity. Doing different activities to become more aware of the different activities or resources that provide academic support. And also getting involved and making sure that you're working towards your resume. I see that, Catherine, you did ask to see the platform. I'd be happy to show you that in just a second. And then just a kind of reflection at the end. The way that it's kind of worked also as a bit of a micro-credential, again, it's not in place of any type of degree, but students who successfully completed all of the challenges within the badges, each badge has 3 to 4 challenges, requirements of things that you have to do in order to earn the badge. Students who earned all 5 of those were then eligible to get a $500 scholarship towards their fall and spring tuition in their first year. So there was certainly a carrot that we were able to dangle there for them that probably skewed our data in terms of how many people completed it. But so that was actually a successful use of digital badges in that context. Second, let's see if I can get that. I want to talk just a little bit about the academic student tutor training within athletics. I had just some contacts in the Department of Athletics, and I had mentioned that there's these digital badges that we might be able to find a use for within athletics. And as we discussed, potential uses for it, one of the associate athletic directors said, hey, this would be a great way to train our student tutors that work with the student athletes. Previously, all they were doing was having students sit in, the student tutors sit in a room for about 2 hours and just watch, PowerPoint after PowerPoint. They didn't have a way to really ensure that the tutors were actually understanding or grasping, what they were being trained on, and also they didn't have a real way to ensure that that was recorded. That obviously within athletics and things that are happening in the news, occasionally there's potential for scandals and things like that, and the athletic department wanted to make sure that if there was ever an issue between a student tutor and a student athlete, that the athletic department could go back and point to the fact that they have it recorded, the student was properly trained. And so we implemented these 7 badges for these student tutors on these specific topics to just really to provide them training. What was a little bit different from the digital badges for the summer start, they're both on the same platform. And I should say that Purdue has its own homegrown digital badge platform called Open Passport. And so one difference is that with this being more of a training mechanism for the student tutors, it was mainly just kind of a repository for different resources. There were quizzes that were implemented. And so in some ways it was a little bit like an LMS where, you know, the student tutor was meant to go through and read or even look at some slides on their own time, and then take a quiz and ensure that they understood the content that they just read, and ensure that they knew what certain protocol and policies were for being a student tutor. I'd also like to just kind of walk you through something that we just recently launched at Purdue, and it was in partnership with one of our platform partners, FutureLearn, which is based in the UK. And that was developing a micro-credential that would be a pathway to admission to one of our graduate programs, a Master's of Science in Communication. So the primary, or the topic of the micro-credential on FutureLearn was digital media analytics, and really the content for the series of courses that became MOOCs on FutureLearn stemmed from a 3-credit-hour course that was taught by one of the faculty members of the master's program. So we broke that out across 5 courses that were available to anyone on FutureLearn, but we made sure that learners were aware that this was part of a pathway that could potentially lead to admission into a graduate degree program at Purdue. So students who completed all 5 courses and purchased the certificates in each of those were then eligible to take an assessment course, and that was also on FutureLearn's platform. Those who successfully completed the assessment with I believe a 70% or higher were then awarded from FutureLearn a micro-credential. Now, learners could obviously, well, this model in and of itself offers for a lot of flexibility based on the learner's goals and needs. And, you know, if someone only wants some of the content in one of the courses, they have access to do that. If they want to get the micro-credential, have something that they can show to an employer that they're, you know, committed to learning new things, and they have this micro-credential, that might be of value to someone. But another thing that I really liked about this model, well, that I like about it, is that this allows for someone to come into a course that maybe they're just interested in the topic and they have no idea that they even want to pursue a master's degree in this. And as they progress throughout, you know, the different courses, maybe they really become interested and think, well, you know, maybe I do want a grad certificate or a degree in this. And so learners who got the micro-credential were then, if they chose to apply to, or if they choose, I should say, I keep saying past tense, but this is actually happening in real time. We actually haven't had anyone apply just yet. But anyone who then is admitted, going through the regular admissions process, would then have 3 credit hours applied to the degree requirements for either the graduate certificate in the communications, or the master's degree program in communications also. And so again, finding ways to offer more flexibility, get learners who we may not otherwise have reached, is really kind of the motivation on this. And so before I go to the next slide, which is really just some questions, I am happy to show a little bit of our Passport digital badge platform here. So I guess I should stop and say, are there any questions before I do that? Everyone's still with me? Okay, I'll assume that silence means good. Oh, here we go. Let me just check here on the chat. All right, everyone's here. Great so far. Cool, thanks. So this again was for our Summer Start program. This was actually the last badge in the 5-badge series that learners were meant to take. And this is the platform that Purdue has created called Open Passport. So if I'm a student or a learner that's been invited to take these badges, I would come first to this page. There's an overview about what the badge is kind of about, and then there are individual challenges within each badge that again are the various requirements that students would need to complete in order to earn the badge. So on this particular challenge here, we provide an additional kind of prompt on what we want them to do. And this was actually asking us to do a video reflection after they've just completed the 5 weeks of their first college experience. What do you like? How do you think being a part of Summer Start helped improve your abilities to succeed in college? What habits have you formed in these past 5 weeks that's going to help you transition from high school to college and things like that? And so if a student then, after reading through what's expected in order to earn the badge, they can click Get Started. Again, here's some additional instructions here. And then if they click Begin the Badge, it will take them, and we do have a mobile app version of this platform also, which we saw a lot of students do, and so they can attach a video. A lot of the students would just turn on the camera on their phone and just record their reflection, answering the questions that they had prompted to do, or they could either upload a document if they wanted to just write out, or they can just really type a response right here in the platform itself, and then they can submit. On the more of an instructor or administrator side, I could then go in and see some of these are duplicated, so I apologize here. Let's just go ahead and look at this. Just had to copy these a number of times before. So when someone has submitted something, the administrators can come in and look at, here are all the students' names, and these columns here are individual challenges for each corresponding badge. And I can go in and see and look at, we'll take a look at Norton's here. Looks like this may have been just attach a file here. And this looks like it's just the requirement was just attach a screenshot of something that they had either done. And so I can either rescore the submission since I've already approved it, but normally this would give me an opportunity where I could provide feedback if I didn't think that the student had met the criteria for this particular challenge, and I could give them the option to resubmit, or I can go ahead and approve, or I could just decline it. And that's really just kind of the basis of the platform that can be quite customized, where you can ask students to, like I said, upload a video, type a response, upload some type of document. Some of the activities that we had in this program were, students had to physically go somewhere on campus, and so some of the requirements all we said was, take a picture of yourself in front of this place or whatever, and so they would upload a picture and things like that. Or they had to attend an event where the speaker was going to be talking on some type of college success practice for them. So yeah, so that is a Passport, and I wanted to just kind of come back to some of these questions here. And this is where I would really like this to turn into a conversation, either if you want to type in a question or a comment, or just unmute yourself, that'd be great too. But I'd be interested to know if anyone else in the session has or knows of anyone else at their institution tried to implement digital badges, and if so, how's that going? Let's start with that question first, then we can kind of move on. Anyone want to chime in?
Hi, everyone. It's Catherine Henderson from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. We currently have a pilot going on our Monroe Park campus that's probably starting this fall that is about using Credly, or I believe they're piloting Credly right now. And so it's something that we're certainly looking at. The person that I spoke with said he had a lot of interest from a lot of different parts of the university, but it's currently just being piloted with our continuing education group.
Great, that sounds exciting. I'd be interested to hear how that goes. Anyone else? maybe attempting digital badges? Well, I guess maybe Catherine, since you've talked about the pilot is going on at your institution, you know, what's the main motivation at your institution for trying this out with continuing education, and have there been any significant roadblocks and things like that?
Not completely involved with the project. It didn't sound like it sounded like the main roadblock right now was just purchasing and trying to get a contract in place. My question for you is, with the open progress, I think, with the Purdue platform, is the tracking motivated or done through the students? It's looked to me like they go in, they complete the challenge, and then you have a dashboard that you essentially review what's been completed.
Yeah, so yeah, there is that. So the instructor or administrator or what have you can go in and monitor progress that's being made on the badges, and look at specific. You can look up specific students as to what they have or have not submitted. The student view, and I can share my screen again. Let me see here. Sorry, just a second. The student can see what badges they've earned, where they are. So this was my individual student page. If I look at my, all right, let's see, my badges, it shows ones that I've earned here. Now, if there are others that I have been added to as a group to go in and complete, they will show up. There aren't any others that I've added to myself on this, but yeah, I would be able to see, you know, any progress, or even if it's partially completed. You know, a digital badge, at least in this platform, or at least the ones that I had set up for these two different projects, do not have to be completed in one sitting. They just you could partially complete it and then come back later and things like that. So, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. It looks like it's more the student tracking versus you having to go in and say, okay, well, so-and-so completed this, this, and this, so you check it off yourself, versus what it looks like the students do it for. It looks like it's a much less of an administrative burden than what I was initially anticipating.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. That it is, you know, the onus is a little bit more on the student. Obviously, I think that it would vary somewhat based on the nature of the badge itself and the intended outcomes. So if this was, you know, being viewed, if the badges were being viewed as the actual kind of LMS for, you know, the course, an administrator or an instructor may want to be a little bit more engaged. You can send out reminders to students about, like, hey, just, you know, this badge is due in a week or so. But yeah, it is, I think, a lot more, like you said, student facing, or that it's the responsibility to track it is on the student. Other questions?
Hey, Jacob. You know, I'm also at BCU, but we not really involved with that project either. One of the things that I have had some questions on regarding this is sort of what's the perceptions of credibility, you know, in terms of, I mean, there's no accrediting body behind them. Like, I love the concept of it, but how much is it perceived by administration or the next level that says, okay, this is a valid assessment of competency? Is it something that, yeah, we make students go through, but we would never respect it on a resume? Where are you? What conversations have you had? I'm not expecting you have the answers. What conversations have you had around that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's been, I guess, you know, conversations at Purdue. One of our colleges, the Purdue Polytechnic Institute, has actually been the front runner on competency-based curriculum, and have utilized digital badges to some degree. I think it was originally intended that the digital badges would actually kind of replace the typical transcript and things for that college. I asked a faculty member yesterday about how things were going, and they said the implementation on that has not been as extensive as originally intended. And I think that's some of the biggest hurdles and concepts to get people to buy into that. I think that there is a stigma, at least within the academy, that that these are maybe a little more shallow and less rigorous, and that how are you going to communicate on transcript? All the what's happened there. I mean, I would certainly argue that these are much more effective than an academic transcript. Your transcript, all you're showing, is a course that was taken, and the course descriptions or the course titles certainly vary, and a letter grade may not accurately portray what that student learned in that class. But within digital badge, a portfolio system, you can go in and actually look at the metadata that's in there and see the requirements of what the student had to do in order to earn that. So I think it's digital badges are still very young, and total buy-in is going to take a while. Whether or not this is now, I'm just speaking from my own personal opinion, whether or not these are going to totally take over and fully replace the academic transcript, and this is what employers are going to want to see rather than a resume. I think that we're years away from that still, but I think that we'll start to see more and more people wanting to see like visual proof and like, okay, so show me what you can do with Microsoft Excel. Like, well, I have Microsoft Excel badge. But within the academy, yeah, there have been some. There certainly have been some, I think, struggles to really embrace something like this. And I think a lot of it is due to just our traditional structure and how we've done things for so long. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's, I'm on board with them as well. And I know, through having some conversations, what I haven't seen is, the universities that have pursued it have kind of, they put it out there as a revenue generation avenue or a way to bring students in. But then if you take that same university and go to their HR department, look at their job postings, they want traditional degrees and they won't accept credentials, yet they're selling them. So that's where I'm seeing the disconnect so far. I think we can get there, but it's not there yet.
No, that's a good point, Mike. I think again, this is just my own individual opinion. I think if we can get to start piloting, like Catherine said, at VCU to at least try them out and to use digital badges or micro-credentials in other forms, like with some of these other programs, I think that faculty and administrators might start to see the value of them a bit more. And I really think it's just going to be a matter of time. But who knows? I mean, they might not really ever take hold. So we'll just see. So on the more of kind of the micro-credential side, as I talked about our partnership with FutureLearn, that was actual pathway into a degree program. That one did have some, significant pushback because MOOCs are viewed so negatively by faculty as being, very shallow, very unrigorous. If it's free, why is it of any value to anybody? And so we really had a lot of pushback, particularly from our graduate school, and allowing this right at first. And we had to go the rounds with them a lot to show them that we already had policy in place. It just wasn't. No one practiced it where we allowed the departments and the faculty to give departmental credit to students if for any type of previous educational activity or completion, but it was the department, within the department's purview to say yes, that meets the standards or is equal to X number of credit hours. And so we're able to, working with the graduate council, get a policy and procedure put in place where a department could propose that they want to set up a pathway into a degree program that would be recognized by the graduate school, and that students who completed that would receive credits for those previously non-credit courses they complete. So thoughts or questions on anything else? Let's see, I had some other prompts here. Well, I guess in just terms of things at your institution or teams that you're working on, are there other questions or things that you're grappling with that that are maybe impeding or inhibiting the pursuit of implementing something like this? Obviously, there's always things like resources and getting contracts with third-party vendors and things like that. But what kind of things are you running into?
I would say one thing is, and I'm on a medical campus, that a lot of the medical programs have their own accrediting bodies, and when kind of falls into continuing education or sort of professional education. So the extra layer is to get the university to support a credential, and then also to get this body to approve the existence of that credential, or to recognize it, because that's really where we're going to get more individuals from the community outside. And the hope is to use this as sort of a hook to bring people into the programs, and also to kind of provide benefits to our alumni. But with those different accrediting bodies, it's been a bit of a challenge. They're not all there yet.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So especially on a medical campus there. So thoughts from anyone else or questions on anything I've shared, or just the topic in general?
I'm curious what other platforms the folks on this discussion group have encountered.
That's a great question. You said that they were looking at Credly where you are, Catherine?
Yeah, I think they were going between, and this is just off the top of my head, Badger and Credly were the two that they were kind of looking at.
Yeah, and it's been my experience, the more people I've talked to around the country and even other parts of the world, that Credly and Badger are kind of the bigger players right now on the digital badge platform side. But yeah, has anyone looked at anything else, or have they had experience in using any other platform?
No, I do know that we recently kind of moved over to like LinkedIn Learning, that does some sort of badging elements, and something definitely to explore is that how can we kind of connect that with use that existing infrastructure and maybe add things to it. That's haven't gotten real far with it. I know that we just started off about a month ago. So, and I can't say the badging has really even been fully put in there, but the potential's there. At least they're claiming it.
When I like how with the LinkedIn Learning connection, it has a place that the badge automatically goes. That's not necessarily something you have to take code and embed in this other place, which it sounds like Credly may end up having to do. What, Jacob, was the motivation for building was it Open Passport? Oh, and it looks, yeah.
Yeah, Open Passport. So that actually preceded my time here at Purdue. I came here in about 2015, and they had it in place. I know that Purdue has just, kind of as a tech school, wanted to develop their own internal tech that they could then potentially, sell to others and things like that. It's been interesting to see. I don't work specifically with Passport or the people who administer it, but my guess is that it has not quite taken off the way that they were intending. So I don't have the exact answer to your question in terms of why they developed their own internal as opposed to just going and buying something that was already there. I guess that principle alone, on either buying it or building it, there's little consistency, at least at Purdue, on how we act with that. But I think that they've begun to explore, how it could then be, sold and marketed to other institutions. I know that University of Arizona has utilized it to some degree, but not entirely sure what that looks like. So, and I see that Kayla mentioned the chat box that at Virginia Tech they had used Portfolium for a couple of years, and they added badging early in the contract with them. And that they also have Badger on campus, that's mostly with faculty and grad student development. Any additional commentary you could give us, Kayla, on how that's going? Or I'd be particularly interested in learning a little more about how Portfolium uses the badges within their platform, if you can. If not, that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. We are. I work in the library, and we're leading our digital literacy initiative on campus. And that's one of the first things that we're kind of looking at with badging through Portfolium. And it's really closely tied to artifacts. So Portfolium being an e-portfolio platform, it ties in very closely with Canvas, and they were recently acquired by Canvas or merged with Canvas. So it works very closely with the LMS that we have here.
Great, thanks. I think that's an important feature, is to have a smooth integration with whatever learning management system that's being used. We've at Purdue have recently increased our efforts to engage corporate partners a lot more in our online offerings, and to do that, our vice president really kind of formed a corporate advisory group, just some CEOs of different companies that Purdue has worked with for a long time, and really try to get a sense of what is it that they want, rather than trying to market to them what we already have. So what is it that corporate partners are wanting? And the primary feedback that we're getting is that they want small, short, kind of chunks of instruction that they can offer to their employees on very specific topics. Digital badges have been mentioned as in those conversations as a possible solution to that. We've seen in the contracts or the arrangements and partnerships that we've developed with corporate partners who have expressed interest in smaller chunks. We've just created some very short courses. Some have implemented digital badge, but have not actually used the platform. Rather, they've just used really just a graphic that the learner can have access to and put on their LinkedIn profile or something like that. But that it was I guess somewhat validating from my perspective in hearing that this is what the market's wanting out there. They want things that are short, relevant, easily accessible, and that can really they can be shared easily to demonstrate that someone has upskilled in some regard. So I don't know if anyone else has had similar experience in working with corporate partners, and if they are seeing similar demand. If so, if you want to comment on that, that'd be great. I think we have a few more minutes.
I haven't had that experience yet, but I know one area that I've been thinking about these is, can they be used sort of as a pre-intervention or post-intervention for like DFW courses? What can you do to sort of, so that we can kind of get a step of how people are, what their skill set is going into these courses, and maybe better assess which placement they should be in, or even as a matter of after the initial failure, is this sort of you must take these badges in order to earn a step back into the course? I think there's a lot of issues with that. I know that we have, some major pain point courses, and I could see this being one way to, at least to track that and then put some effort into it.
No, I think that there's something there on that, Mike. I know there was a study that I read by Ma in 2016 that looked at implementing digital badges for college students as a way to kind of identify, well, so the students were previously identified as somewhat at risk that needed some remediation. And the digital badges focused on kind of academic skills, basic academic skills. So, studying and, kind of basic math and things like that. So the badges were used as kind of the instructional delivery system itself. But in order for the students to kind of be able to stay enrolled and continue on, they did have to complete these digital badges. And so, so I think that there is something there with looking at and using digital badges in that type of context. Molly, do we have till 11:45 or do we have longer than that? Can't remember.
Technically, the session goes until noon, and the next one is until 1. So it's up to you if you want to go until 12 or until 11:45. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm happy to continue the conversation, and I think we've had good discussion, back and forth and sharing, what some people have seen at their own institutions. I guess, are there any other questions that anyone else has with, what are these digital badges all about? How can we leverage them? And anything else there? Oh, and Molly did comment, if you haven't seen it, these sessions are being recorded if you need to review anything that we've talked about. Well, I hope, I hope two things. One, I hope you're okay if I do sign off now. But again, I'm also very happy to stay on it if anyone wants to continue talking. But I hope that you have found this to be valuable, just to, if nothing else, just to have a conversation about, questions like this that I know we all deal with at our institutions. And so, if there are ever other questions or things that you have for me, Molly, I don't know if our contact information has been shared previously as a presenter, but I'm happy to give that to Molly. And if anyone has interest in reaching out and continuing any conversations or asking questions or collaborating, I'd be happy to do that too. So.
Yeah, I can provide it. And if you want to put it in the chat box so everyone here has it right away, you're welcome to do that also. And that way it'll be in the recording too.
Yeah, just Askeroth at Purdue.edu is probably the best way. You can just contact me if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts or want to know what Purdue's up to in terms of online education, and be happy to connect. So again, I appreciate everybody that for choosing to come and be a part of this session, and hope that it was helpful, and appreciate those who participated.